Let me just start by saying prayers up to Terrence, Clarke, and everyone involved in the accident. A 19-year-old Kentucky player was about to make the NBA. It just sucks to see someone that was about to make such a big difference to himself and his family, and who had finally achieved, obviously, what he was trying to achieve his entire life, for that to happen at 19. It just sucks. So I thought I would just say my prayers and good luck to his family and everyone involved. Just sucks to see. It's kind of hard to segue from something that tragic to now talking about the Washington Wizards. Prayers up to Terrence, Clarke, and his family once again. That's just incredibly tough to see. It definitely puts things into perspective that anything can happen just like that. It's crazy. But I guess talking about the Washington Wizards, I guess you could say I'm hopping on the bandwagon because I talked about the New York Knicks before, who have the longest winning streak in the NBA. Why not talk about the Washington Wizards, who have the second longest winning streak in the NBA at 6 wins now? And well, if you just forecast the next couple of games against the OKC Thunder and the Cleveland Cavaliers, they should pretty comfortably be able to extend that 6-game win streak to 8. But instead of getting ahead of ourselves, let's focus on what the Wizards have done to turn their season around, because they started 6-17. They were the second worst team in the NBA by record. They had a bottom 2 defense. They had a bottom 10 offense. They were worse than the likes of Detroit, Cleveland, Orlando, etc. It was a tough start. And we also have to put it into perspective. They had a number of things happen to their team. They had injuries, they had protocol, they were dealing with new players in a new situation. It wasn't the ideal way to start a season, but still, 6-17 was a lot worse than we would have anticipated, even with those issues in mind. And well, since then, they've been 19-17 over the last 36 games, which is pretty impressive. Actually boast the 7th best defensive rating in the NBA over that period of time, which might be a bit unexpected considering you would have thought their offense would be the driving force, given Bradley Beal, Russell Westbrook, and the fact that to start the season, they were awful defensively. You wouldn't have thought such a drastic switch would be made halfway through the season, but it has been made, and they look a lot better of late. And to just go one step further, if you were to just put away those 7 games that Bradley Beal has missed out of the 36 that they've played, they would be 18-11 because they've gone 1-6 without him, which shows his importance, but also shows that when he's healthy with Russell Westbrook and the other guys on that team, they've been pretty good, including some big wins over the likes of Denver, Boston, Utah. Recently, they'd actually be on a 9-game winning streak if you counted the games Beal has played, because he missed a few of those games in which they lost, but they would be on a 9-game winning streak with Bradley Beal in the lineup. So things are definitely turning around, and the defense has a lot to do with that. And I mean, the guy who has made the biggest impact just recently over the last 8 or so games is Daniel Gafford. Yes, from the Chicago Bulls, who wasn't having a great season in Chicago, who has come to Washington and has been a difference maker, like a legitimate difference maker. He's averaging 12-6 on nearly 70% efficiency, which I mean isn't a huge surprise when you have someone like Russell Westbrook spoon-feeding you, who is one of the best at doing that in the entire NBA. He's fantastic at doing that. But Daniel Gafford, the surprising thing and the great thing has been the fact he's averaging 2 blocks a game. In under 20 minutes a night, he's averaging 2 blocks a game, and he's had some monster performances. I mean, it's only been 8 games, but over the last 8 games, with Gafford in the lineup for 7 of those, they have had the number 1 defense in the entire NBA, with Daniel Gafford swatting shots. And a lot of this comes from the fact that they are keeping opponents well below their usual field goal percentage at the rim with the new improved rim presence of Daniel Gafford. They're also defending the 3-ball a lot better, going from average to top 10 in the league over this stretch. Ultimately, they're playing a lot more inspired defense. And it makes a lot of sense. They go from a team that started the season 6-17. They were pretty banged up. The season looked rough for them, and you can understand how they would lose their focus, their energy on defense, and all of a sudden you start missing rotations, you get angry, you get frustrated, then you miss more rotations, etc., etc. It's a pretty harsh cycle that you can get stuck in. All of a sudden, you bring in someone like Daniel Gafford recently, who has brought a spark to their defense. He's just brought energy, because that's the kind of player he is, and an impact. Not just energy, but he's brought legitimate impact, legitimate rim presence, and everyone else just lifts a bit. Everyone else is more inspired to play defense. They've got a playoff spot on the line. They're starting to win games, and they recognize that their defense is a big factor for them winning these games, so it's easy to see why they're starting to switch on a lot more defensively, which has been the calling card for them, particularly particularly recently, where, like I said, they've had the number one defense in the league over the last 8 games. Pretty short sample size, and there have been some weak teams that they've played, and there's also been some tougher teams like the Utah Jazz who they've managed to beat, and even some decent offenses like the Golden State Warriors, like the New Orleans Pelicans. So it hasn't just been all smooth sailing over the last 8 games, and they've still managed to be really good defensively, which is really impressive. But outside of Daniel Gafford just turning into Bill Russell out of absolutely nowhere, what else has helped the Wizards win these games? They're actually closing games now. Earlier in the season, they could not close games, and all of a sudden, they're doing that. And a lot of this credit goes to Russell Westbrook. And in general, when talking about Russ, I could just sit here and be like, oh, I never doubted Russ. I always knew he would get back to what he can do in terms of playmaking, in terms of doing everything that Russ has made a name for himself doing, helping teams win. But I questioned it. After his slow start to the season, I questioned if maybe this is towards the end of Russell Westbrook's career. Obviously, someone who relies that heavily on athleticism. He's struggled with injuries recently. I definitely questioned things, and I was wrong because apparently he was injured earlier in the year, and you can see he's got more spring in his step. He's playing a lot better, and he's been really nice for the Wizards recently. I mean, just look at his playmaking. He's giving you like 15 assists a night. You can see the impact he has on Daniel Gafford, who all of a sudden goes from someone averaging 5 points a game in Chicago to now averaging double digits in Washington. That's the Russell Westbrook impact. Make it known. But to be specific, over the last 36 games in which the Wizards have been above 500, Russ is giving you about 12 assists a night, and you can call it stat padding if you want, but the Wizards also have one of the best defensive rebounding teams in the league, and I mean, it helps when your point guard is getting you 10 of those a game, which is contributing to defense. Defensive rebounding is defense. If you're letting second chance points, that is a huge killer, so he's helping that out. He's helping them out on the glass and the playmaking, as he always has done for his entire career, and particularly over the last 35 or so games, he's picked that up another notch. But just getting back to what I was talking about in terms of closing out games, it's been Russ has been the closer in 26 games. The Wizards are 500 in clutch situations, basically just close games down the stretch, not too much to it. He has been shooting 57% from the field and 40% from 3, while averaging about a point a minute over those 26 games. Incredibly efficient, incredibly impactful, and has helped lead them to multiple wins down the stretch, something that he has been criticized for in the past, but he's been fantastic this season. On the flip side, Bradley Beal actually has struggled in the clutch, but you still see his overall impact. I mean, the team is 1-6 without him in the lineup over the last 7 games. He is their leading scorer. He is their leading offensive weapon. You can see the offense really stutter with him out of the lineup. If you look at the rest of the lineup and the rest of the offense, it's such a mixed bag. You don't exactly know what you're going to get on any given night. I mean, you know what you're getting from the modern day Kareem, that is Robin Lopez. Kareem meets Sideshow Bob. You know what you're getting from him. You know what you're getting from Russell Westbrook in terms of his playmaking, in terms of everything else that he brings to the table. But outside of that, do you really know what you're getting from Davis Bertans? Recently, he has started to find some form, and that would be huge if he can consistently give you closer to 15 points a night instead of what he was giving you earlier in the season. You also have someone like Rui Hachimura, who is a big swing guy for this team. Rui was averaging 20 points a game on great efficiency for a 10-game stretch in March, which shows he is capable of being that third option kind of guy who can shoot the ball, who can score pretty effectively, and just be that third guy that they haven't really had all season long. So hopefully when he returns from his injury, he's currently resting with knee soreness, he can come back and at least get to close to what he was doing before, because we've seen him that he can go for a stretch of play where he's legitimately a really good player, and he's done it more than once, but that stretch was incredibly impressive just last month. If I'm being completely honest, I'm not all the way sold on the Washington Wizards. I don't think you guys as fans are probably sold on them yet. Obviously, they started the season so slowly, but to get around 500 over the last 35 games, to go on a 6-game winning streak, which would be 9 games if you factored in the games that Bradley Beal has played, to see Davis Bertans start to find some form. Daniel Gafford has been huge defensively. Russell Westbrook is scoring in the clutch. Robin Lopez, laugh at him all you want. He is a really solid rotational piece who consistently makes shots. He's been good. You've got guys like Ish Smith and Raul Neto who consistently play pretty good minutes and make an impact. They've got some impactful players, but I think outside of all of these guys, the guy that I think is the biggest difference maker going forward, going into the playoffs, going into the play-in, whatever you want to call it, it's Rui. Rui Hachimura, because like I mentioned, if you can get that same production out of him for a 10 or 12 game stretch after he comes back from injury, get him to average 16 to 18 points a game on pretty good efficiency. The offense has been kind of struggling at the moment, and outside of Bradley Beal and Russell Westbrook, you really don't know what you're getting on a night-to-night basis, but Rui has the potential to be that consistent third option, and you're going to need him. He's also got some size defensively. Ultimately, you want him to be your third best player, and he's shown the potential to definitely be a good third best player if he can all piece it together. And I think Rui Hachimura does hold the keys to going on a run later in the season if they want to make the 8th seed, if they want to make the playoffs, and then for them to be a team that could actually cause a little bit of a stir in the playoffs, you need that production out of those two guys. Other than that, again, rest in peace to Terrence Clarke. Terrible news. You hate to see it. So that's all I've got to say. Have a great day. Stay safe. That's all I can say. Bye.